hope everybody's safe out there over there in Florida. Getting right into the dad joke. Why did the man is going to be dark green? This is the first time that we've seen red on the radar, so that actually helps me out in the future, kind of knowing what's going on. It's even stretching over to the west. Got a lot of smoke and haze, so if you're going through there, be very, very careful. At any point, visibility could be very, very low. Um, yeah, great tool to use in conjunction with something else. But this is not going to be.
Rolling down the highway, sun just breaking through. Radio's playing loud, the show's for me and you. Learn how to book your loads and make that money flow. Keep the shiny side up wherever we go.
Good morning. I hope everybody's safe out there over there in Florida. Getting right into the dad joke. Why did the man run around the bed? He was trying to catch up on his sleep. Oh, goodness. Goodness. Who thinks up these jokes? All right, so having a look at the weather here. Of course, Florida's going to be dark green. This is the first time that we've seen red on the radar, so that actually helps me out in the future, kind of knowing what's going on. If you're curious, this is the Weather Street, weatherstreet.com. It's their website. I like it for the visuals. Up there in the Northeast, you've got some rain. Pretty much from New York all the way through the rest of the Northeast. And then, I mean, you got a little bit of rain in the rest of the country, but nothing to be concerned about. You do have, in the northern middle part of the United States, and even stretching over to the west, got a lot of smoke and haze. So if you're going through there, be very, very careful. At any point, visibility could be very, very low. Um, yeah, so you guys be safe out there. Keep an eye on the weather. Now, dipping into the national load counts, this is broken down by state. This is not going, this is a great tool to use in conjunction with something else, but this is not going to be a tool that you could actually, position your truck with. Um, but it is a tool that you need to help position your truck. You just can't use this alone. A good example is going to be California. It's going to be way above. There's a lot of freight to trucks over in California, but if you were to go to the northern half of the state, you might get stuck because the majority of the freight is going to be in the southern half. So use this, but here in a few minutes, we're going to actually look into the different markets, break it down a little more, so that way we know exactly where the freight is located. So starting off with Alabama, 451 loads in to 132 loads out. That's horrendous. That's way low, even for Alabama standards. So very rough there. Arkansas, 227 loads in to 279 loads out. That's pretty good considering that we're this late into the week for Arkansas, right? It's above that 50-50 mark, but not exactly a whole lot of negotiating power going on. Arizona, 404 loads in to 252 loads out. That's just normal for them. California, 1,194 loads in to 1,879 loads out. That's normal, but that's also well above that 50-50 mark there. So got some negotiating power over there in Cali. Colorado, 292 loads in to 144 loads out. That's crazy. As crazy as this is going to sound, that's not bad for Colorado. It's not the greatest of states to go to position your truck. Connecticut, 124 loads in to 78 loads out. DC, it has a load. It has one. 21 trucks headed that way, though, to fight for it. Delaware, 63 loads in to 35 loads out. Florida, 1,312 loads in to 203 loads out. A bit of a moot point at this point. I imagine there's not a lot of working going on over there. Georgia, 1,561 loads in to 608 loads out. If you're in Georgia, good luck. That's really rough. That's even a dip in production, even for Georgia standards, as right now, right, for the past few months. Iowa, 229 loads in to 291 loads out. A little bit, it's kind of remaining steady. I would have liked to have seen it increase later in the week, but we didn't get that pump. So you have some negotiating power in Iowa, but not a lot. So that is a swing a little bit towards the broker's favor. Idaho, 69 loads in to 102 loads out. That's also another dip for Iowa. or excuse me, Idaho. Um, so we'll see how the rest of the Northwest is doing. Illinois, 692 loads in to 1,375 loads out. Uh, that's in good shape there for Illinois. You got some negotiating power there. Use it, especially being that that's one of the larger markets. Indiana, 438 loads in to 879 loads out. Bit of a dip as well, but well above that 50-50 mark. So you definitely have negotiating power there. Use it there as well. Kansas, 210 loads in to 122 loads out. It's a massive, massive decrease. Um, yeah. Kentucky, 343 loads in to 386 loads out. So it's remaining above that, above that loads in, loads out, more loads out than loads in ratio. But it is a bit of a decrease for Kentucky for throughout the week. Louisiana, 246 loads in to 163 loads out. Once again, also a dip. We're seeing a dip kind of across the board here, if you haven't noticed. Massachusetts, 274 loads in to 157 loads out. It's about normal for them, but also kind of the same. A dip. Maryland, 259 loads in to 303 loads out. So it's good to see them hanging on. They're above that. They're above that halfway point, that halfway mark. Maine, 40 loads in to 79 loads out. Michigan, 358 loads in to 491 loads out. So they're hanging strong too. Love to see it for the Great Lakes states. Not the massive bump that we've seen uh, in recent weeks and even recent months, but it is still above that 50-50 mark, so it is still in good shape. You do have that negotiating power there. Minnesota, 164 loads in to 330 loads out. Didn't see an increase, but excellent negotiating power from Minnesota as well. So story remains the same for the Great Lakes states. Missouri, 383 loads in to 476 loads out. Missouri has come on strong and has remained strong all week. Love to see it. Mississippi, 137 loads in to 190 loads out. Don't let that fool you. You've got a lot of uh, poor markets surrounding it, so it's getting eaten up by everything else around it. Montana, 53 loads in to 20 loads out. North Carolina, 1,150 loads in to 405 loads out. That's rough, but it's on par with what we've seen over the past few weeks. So should be no surprise if you're revisiting. North Dakota, 24 loads in to 76 loads out. So way above the mark there, but a dip uh, in both metrics there. So you still have some negotiating power up there, but we are seeing a little bit of a drop at the end of this week. Nebraska, 103 loads in to 98 loads out. Uh, that's actually not bad for Nebraska. It's low in volume, on both sides, but that's not bad for Nebraska. New Hampshire, 67 loads in to 10 loads out. Jersey, 452 loads in to 778 loads out. This seems to be one of those days where they don't have a ton of trucks headed that way, but they have the same amount of freight headed that way. Sorry, I keep doing that. My allergies, they're super bad down here in Texas right now. New Mexico, 94 loads in to 321 loads out. I still wouldn't trust that. I don't know. It was beat in my head. Don't go to New Mexico. So do with that what you will. Got negotiating power there apparently. I don't know. I just don't trust it. I don't call me cynic. Nevada, 154 loads in, the 389 loads out. So really good shape for Nevada. You got negotiating power there. Southern California boys might be happy with it. We'll have to see because we're going to look at the heat map because lately the freight's been in the northern half of Nevada, not the southern half. So New York, 553 loads in to 643 loads out. That's definitely a dip in production there. So you don't really have negotiating power there. Ohio, 667 loads in to 1,279 loads out. Really good shape for Ohio there. Definitely negotiating power. Use it. Oklahoma, 308 loads in, 113 loads out. It's kind of normal for them. Oregon, 124 loads in to 335 loads out. So Oregon's still remaining, it's remaining strong up there for the Northwest. I'd still want to see what Washington's doing before I'd make that decision, though. Pennsylvania, 979 loads in to 1,219 loads out. Bit of a dip for them, even for PA. Kind of the pattern across the board, unfortunately, for the end of this week. Rhode Island, 34 loads in to 9 loads out. South Carolina, 566 loads in to 337 loads out. So that's a dip for South Carolina. So Southeast is very, very bad shape. South Dakota, 42 loads in to 47 loads out. Normal for them. Tennessee, 641 loads in to 450 loads out. It's a dip, but it's also just standard for Tennessee over the past few weeks. Utah, 193 loads in to 209 loads out. Just normal right there at that 50-50 mark. Virginia, 534 loads in to 317 loads out. Another dip. Vermont, 22 loads in to 33 loads out. Washington, 207 loads in to 422 loads out. So, Northwest still remaining strong. Um, Still proving to be a great place to make some money and negotiate. Wisconsin, 256 loads in to 711 loads out. Excellent. A lot of that got eaten up from yesterday, but still excellent shape. Plenty of negotiating power. Make the money. They will negotiate with you. And I say that every day, multiple times a day. I just feel like some of y'all don't believe me, and it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing to me that y'all think that these brokers will not negotiate with you. West Virginia, 74 loads in to 92 loads out. Wyoming, 33 loads in to 51 loads out. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's later in the week, but we are just going to have a quick look at it. The spot load post. This is overall. This is all three. This is vans, flatbeds, and reefers. From last week to the week prior, up almost 17%, but from September of this year to last year, down 13%. For vans specifically, it's up 16%. And then month over month, this month compared to last year, down 10%. So the actual monies looking for vans, it's from in October compared to September, it's up 4 pennies to 201. For flatbeds, it's up 4 pennies to 243 this month to last month. In reefers, it's down 2 pennies this month compared to last month. We're going to skip that. It's not new. And then the average fuel price across the nation is $3.58, which is up 1.13%. All right, so here's the heat map. So what you do is you take that information that we looked at, if you're headed to one of those states or one of those, you want to look at that area, wherever you're headed for the information that you got before. And now we compare it and see exactly where that freight is located. Like, for instance, Washington. You're not going to be in great shape if you go to Spokane, right? Because you're going to be all the way on the eastern side where it's showing that the freight is on the western half. It's not a surprise, but, if you haven't been doing this for a long time, you wouldn't know, right? You might think, oh, I can just go anywhere to Washington. You can see that load going to Spokane is paying, an extra 10, 20 cents a mile. Is like, oh, well, maybe I should take that. Well, maybe not, because that's quite the deadhead all the way over to Seattle. So this is why we do this. But looking up in the Northwest, you got Seattle market is strong, and the Portland market is strong, and it's showing that the southern half, so really the whole southwestern portion of Oregon, is showing lots of freight. So it's interesting. But if you're going to Portland, make sure you check Seattle and vice versa, because they're both strong. Looking down in California, of course, the southern portion, the Los Angeles area, just the greater Los Angeles area, has a ton of freight. San Diego is not, but it's better than it had been, so that's interesting. The San Francisco market's kind of cooled off a bit, and it's showing to have some freight up there in the very northern part of California, but I think we all know that there's not a ton going on over there. Looking at Nevada, yep, the freight is in the northern half. So, dang, you Southern California boys aren't getting the best of both worlds. Unfortunately, not today. Phoenix market has warmed up a little bit, but do with that what you will. Looking over at Texas, both Houston and Dallas markets are both hot today. Do with that what you will. You just don't get paid coming out of Texas. It just is what it is. I'm not going to cover the very southeast because just really all the states are in really bad shape. There's no point. But you do have for Arkansas, the freight's going to be over near Memphis. Not a surprise. Yeah. Looking at the Midwest, the Kansas City market's cooled off. The St. Louis market is okay. It's still average, but I think it has cooled off. I can't remember actually. It was orange or not. You got Chicago. For Illinois, the majority of the freight's going to be in Chicago. So you've got that really nice ratio there. So that's showing that the majority of the freight's in Chicago. So that means you can get some really good rates coming out of Chicago. And if they're not posted for really good rates out of Chicago, you can negotiate. Make a friend. Call up. Try smiling. If you smile while you're on the phone, your energy, your emotions get portrayed through that. It's literally a trick. It feels goofy. I get it, but it is a trick. Use it. Indiana, the southern half of the state, is going to have the freight. That's normal. Ohio, there's not a hot market in Ohio. It's just kind of all showing to be above average. So it's interesting. Normally, in the latter half of the week, it's the northeastern quadrant of Ohio. So interesting to see that. The Great Lakes states, it's showing everywhere in Michigan to have freight, but the majority of the time it's going to be on the western half. Wisconsin, it's always the eastern half has the freight. So if you do want to if you kind of want to take advantage of the Chicago market, you could go about 100 miles north if you can find a load specifically to about 100 miles north of Chicago, and then you get to check both markets. Wisconsin's in excellent shape right now, and that's something else that you can use if you're in Chicago, and you want you need some negotiating ammo, and they won't negotiate with you. Say, okay, well, that's fine. Wisconsin's in excellent shape. There's about 300% more loads up there than there are trucks. So I'm happy to bounce up there to get a better paying load. I know that where I have more negotiating power up there. But I mean, I really don't want to do the deadhead. So I will take this load if you can offer me that extra $300 for it. Would you do it? I'll take it right now. There you go. The Northeast. So Pennsylvania, the freight that's in Pennsylvania is on the eastern half. That's going to be very standard. It's going to be very normal. And then Jersey, all of Jersey's showing to be hot, but it's usually the northern half over there. Yeah, and that's it. That's it. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the dad joke. Wasn't the greatest one today, but it wasn't bad. We've had worse. You guys stay safe out there. Keep the shiny side up. But as always, stay driven. I'll see you tomorrow.